Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it's time once again to talk all things movies. Joining me, as always, is the other Real to Real Talker, Paul Britton. Paul, welcome. We have lots of movies to talk about.
Yeah, and it's mystifying, honestly, because after this, it's like there's 2 weeks in a row where there's literally nothing coming out.
Yeah,
On streamers, anywhere.
We've come to the end of what has been an interesting summer of movies.
Yeah.
We are going to take a look at a few that really kind of run the gamut of style and story and all kinds of weird stuff.
From a theater release standpoint, it ends loudly.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Tonight we'll be talking about quite a few films that have been released either in theaters or on streaming services as we continue this movie watching and talking journey. Paul, if you had to say right off the top of your head, I'm gonna just throw something at you from our literally moments ago as we prepared to go live. With what remains this year, what is the one big title you're looking for between September and December? One big title. You can only name one. What are you looking forward
to? Okay. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to make something up. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, it's this, even though it's really something else.
Okay.
Avatar.
Okay. All right. That's December.
I want to say Wakanda Forever, but it's not. It's Avatar. Just because I kind of feel like James Cameron has earned the right to make any damn thing he wants, because so many times he comes out with something and people are like, this isn't gonna suck, and then it turns out to be amazing. And
it turns out to be brilliant.
In some way, shape, or form. Even, quibble as you will about Titanic or whatever. It's still like it was still visually amazing. But
sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just throwing that out there because I haven't had a chance to really look forward, but I was sort of lost for a segue, and there you go. You took care of it. Okay. But we'll talk more soon about when we'll be discussing what the rest of the theater experience looks like for the rest of 2022. But for now, we're going to get started with what is going to be quite a few reviews, as we are just going to dedicate this episode to reviewing several films that have come out.
Yeah.
And Paul, as we get started, I got to tell you, I'm excited because this is a film that we're about to talk about that I was looking forward to. And that is the movie Bullet Train.
Yeah.
From the moment that I saw previews for this film, I know that I was excited because it looked quirky, it looked eclectic. There was all kinds going on. I did some research. Fun. I didn't know it was based on a what is it? Let's see.
A book, right?
It's an adaptation of a book called Maria Beetle, published in English as Bullet Train, Japanese novel. And the screenplay is based on that particular novel. Kotaro Saka is the author. And this movie, with the cast of thousands, seemingly hit the theater this week. And so we're going to start there, and we will see what the world of Bullet Train brought us. Paul, what were you looking forward to in this film when you first saw that it was headed to theaters?
This was pure, like, I'm just looking forward to action. I'm just looking forward to shit happening that you're just like, all right, this is crazy, and I like it. And spoiler alert, it was crazy and I liked it. It's just
it was a lot of fun. It has every action trope that you can think of. It is clever, it is funny. The cast itself, there's some folks here in the cast that I think are as their career progresses, they're starting to fit, and I've said this often, they're starting to fit that mold of, look, hey, it's that guy. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson, who we've seen in Godzilla and other movies.
Kick-Ass.
What is it? Kick-Ass, absolutely. Others that were in the film, Joey King, who I think just hits it out of the park every time we see her in anything. And this was the thing about this film was it had so many layers that it had the potential of getting chaotic, and yet somehow it stayed on the rails, to use a train reference.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the directing in this film, because so many storylines, it was one storyline or one objective that had so many offshoots happening around the central objective of the film, and yet it felt very fluid. Your thoughts on the directing of this film in terms of story?
Look, this is the guy who made who basically was responsible for John Wick. Directed Atomic Blonde and directed Deadpool 2. Not the original Deadpool, but they brought him in to do Deadpool 2 because the director of the original Deadpool was like, yeah, I just want to write. I don't want to direct this time. And so, you're going, at the very worst, you're getting a super fun action flick. Like, there's just, he's going to know how to do action. And there are complaints about this movie. Most of the complaints have been around tone. I don't get the complaints because I'm not coming here for, Pride and Prejudice. Quite frankly, even like Die Hard. Like, that's not my expectation. My expectation is Atomic Blonde or Deadpool 2 or John Wick. And I'm sorry, but I got that with humor. Like, it was just, it was a humorous, a more humorous Deadpool, as humorous as Deadpool 2 already was, as Deadpool is, it's like leaned heavily into that. Like, and that's something that people are complaining about and saying, oh, that just didn't work. And it's like, it so totally worked for me. The comp for me is Free Guy. It was where at the end of Free Guy, I was like, that was just a lot of fun. I would not have wanted to be anywhere but this theater watching this movie at this moment during that time. And same thing with this one. I had so much friggin' fun watching this movie. And it moved. It absolutely moved. It just trucked right through everything that was going through. And the concept was so simple, but it worked. It was just like, we're just going to keep going on and until we get to the end of the line. And even that was just like, that's awesome.
There were elements of the storytelling that reminded me that I would describe as Tarantino-esque in relation to the way in which the stories were moved, or the story was moved along with the different characters and the different interactions. Obviously the level of violence and such. But again, for the overall work that was done by Anton Fuqua, who produced the film, but of course the director, David, is it Leitch? How is it pronounced? L-E-I?
I'm not entirely sure, but we'll go with David Leitch.
David Leitch really, for me, is just one of those directors who I have to be reminded of their filmography to be not surprised,
Blonde, man. Atomic Blonde,
right? That's what I'm saying. Is I couldn't tell you off the top of my head that it was he who directed that film. But when I see a movie like this, and you say, he's the guy that did Atomic, I'm like, well, of course. I mean, that's it was sense. So well done, and so I really, really enjoyed this film. I'm not even going to spoil it, but let's just say cameos are a thing in the third act,
for sure.
I tend to remember a film that slows at any point, because you know how I am about pacing. This one, to your point, it moved, and it moved well, and it didn't feel like the 2+ hours that it was. It was just fun. Brad Pitt get into the sort of angst of trying to figure out who he is as a character, and the character trying to figure out who he is in this portion of his life after a lifetime of obviously work in the what term?
Well, he said that he was a snatch and grab guy. Like, so throughout the movie, the common thing throughout the movie is like, look, he's not an assassin, he's a snatch and grab guy.
Right,
that's who he is. And so it's just but even that, he's dealing with shady characters. He's a snatch and grab guy who's dealing with shady characters, and so he alludes to the fact that he had like an emotional episode of some kind, like whether it be a nervous breakdown, or just like an anxiety, a high anxiety situation. Something happened where he had to take some time off, and this is his first job back.
Right.
And I mean, I guess if your complaint is that they make too little of sort of mental health type of things, I guess I could see that as being a complaint, and maybe maybe the movie's a little too frivolous with everything that it does. But I also like like for the most part, I like the frivolity of it.
Sure. I don't look at this as a film I would go to with the intent of learning or dealing with any of that.
Right.
And I frankly, as I did the research, one of the things that I know it's gotten the biggest backlash about was the casting. This being a Japanese novel set in Japan, the characters cast, but even so, the author himself said, I wrote a book that could be basically, cast with anyone.
Yeah.
So he had no issue with it. Ultimately, when we look at a character as as so well put together as Brad Pitt's portrayal of Ladybug, and then the other unique characters that he encounters in this film, each more extreme than the rest. By the time you get to, I think the only complaint I had about this film was when you get to the final reveal of the big bad. Again, I'm not going to ruin the movie.
No.
But while I appreciate the work of the actor, it was not at all who I expected that could have done.
I appreciated that. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I will tell you my one big complaint with this movie, and it's interesting because we're in a unique position because I think it's fair to say a very small portion of the population gets to go to Japan. However, we are two people who happen to have been able to go to Japan very separately for very different reasons, but we've been there.
Yep.
And the thing about Japan, and I'm sure we've never actually spoke about our experiences in Japan, but the thing about Japan is it's remarkably clean. Like the number one overbearing feature of Japan is its oppressive cleanliness. Like it's just oppressively clean. And there is no way all the crazy shit that's going on this train happens without drawing a lot of attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's going to, everything that happens on this train is going to really, really, really stand out.
Yeah.
And I had to like literally be like, that guy's not just picking that up. Like this is a major problem, and they're going to address it as such. And but I had to just kind of divorce myself from the fact that I've been to Japan and I know the reality.
Right.
So,
no, absolutely. And I think in terms of my experience, what I loved about having had that background is how out of place these characters are. As they are who they are, they don't change who they are, and they're in this place that just doesn't. That it's all square peg round hole.
Right.
And yet, that is the charm of the film is telling this story with so many diverse characters, and some that you don't even see in the movie for very long, and yet there's a lasting impact because of the callbacks throughout the rest of the movie that never get tiresome. This is a story that had every potential to fly off the rails, and it never did.
It doesn't for me. For me, there are people like this has not been a super well received movie.
Yeah.
I implore you, don't listen to that. Go see it for yourself.
Check it out.
If you enjoy, like, first of all, if you've seen Free Guy, you have to go see this because this is just like right up that alley.
Same wheelhouse. Yeah.
If you have enjoyed Atomic Blonde or Deadpool 2 or even John Wick, although John Wick is the antithesis of this in that John Wick absolutely is serious. Like there is nothing about John Wick which is like tongue-in-cheek, snarky, funny. Whereas this is completely tongue-in-cheek, snarky, funny. But so it's so worth it. And please go to the big screen because I saw it in IMAX, so I went to a very big screen, and but definitely go see it because this is a theater worthy, perhaps theater must movie. So
indeed. All right. Well, Paul, we're going to get to that point of the show where we talk ratings. 5 tacos is the most a movie can get you can throw some extra guac if you love it enough. So for Bullet Train, Paul, what is your taco rating?
I'm going 4+ guac. It's not a 5 taco movie. I loved it, but it's not a 5 taco movie. But it is absolutely a solid 4 tacos and some awesome, delicious guac.
All right. Well, for myself, this movie lands at a strong 4 tacos. The guac is neither here nor there. I just think that as a film, it really hits all the marks. 5 would have been, it had to be ultra perfect. And, this film can't be because of so much that goes on in it. But 4
like I
strong
said, it's
tacos
frivolous.
for Bullet Train.
It is very frivolous. It's the frivolity is astounding, and and also the trains would be way cleaner. So
absolutely, that's why I took off the guac. No, I'm kidding. All right, so that is our look at the film Bullet Train. We're now going to move to a Hulu release that just happened this past week that I got to tell you, I was looking forward to very much, and that is the movie Prey.
Yes.
I am a big fan of the Predator franchise, and from the moment that I started seeing ads and such pop up, Paul, I was excited about this movie, but also trepidatious because this franchise has not done well with sequels.
It has been hit and miss with sequels. Has had good ideas that don't necessarily always pan out with sequels. I think it's probably especially the last 2. There have been really good elements of them. There have been really bad elements of them. I don't think any of the prior 2, the Predators or the Predator, have been wholly terrible.
True,
but
that's true.
I don't think either also it has been completely like, oh, that's really good. There's been problems with both. They're both entertaining. I would absolutely sit down and watch either one again. The Predator, the interesting thing is with the Predator, the most recent one, it was Shane Black, the guy who gave us Lethal Weapon and Iron Man 3 and a lot. If you're a fan of action movies, you heard of Shane Black before. There were things in there that I absolutely loved, and there were things in there that I absolutely hated. It was a very polarizing movie, and I hadn't seen it before. I did my first ever watch of that like this weekend.
Okay.
So because I kind of wanted to have seen it, to really kind of have a full conversation about the Predator movies. But I mean, it's better than Predator 2, which I did my first rewatch since it came out in theaters and fell asleep during.
I agree. The thing about the Predator for me seemed kind of, I don't know if I'm going to say old hat, but by the time that movie comes out, if you consider also the Alien versus Predator franchise, which and I are not canon to the franchise. The only movie of amidst the sequels that had stood out to me to this point was Predators, and it was because we get Adrian Brody, who finally, sort of tested his action movie chops, and it was just a fun film overall. And so, with that in mind, with those sequels in mind, I was hopeful, but not. I didn't raise my hopes, but just from the outset, Paul, I got to tell you, this movie surprised me in such great ways. I watched it the night it opened, or the night it released on Hulu.
Okay.
And oh man, I'm very happy.
Yeah. God, this movie was good. On so many levels, this movie is good. And it's so different than the movie we just reviewed, Bullet Train, but I had just as positive and happy and joyous, but positive experience watching this movie as I did Bullet Train, but for totally different reasons. This is how you do a really good prequel. Like, just create a universe, expand it a little bit, and just be like, this is where we're going with this, and it works. Oh my God, does this movie work?
It really does. Down to the level of reimagining the creature's evolution in terms of how it looks. I mean, those are the details that for me make this film. From the moment you get the first sort of helmet removal, you realize, man, this is how granular they got in prepping this. It's happening, 300 years prior to, or 200 some odd years before we get introduced to the character, right?
Right.
And for that to be a thought that, hey, these creatures have evolved forward from this point,
right, for
and
sure.
who knows from when before.
Technologically speaking, and
exactly.
Yeah,
the creature design was amazing. And just the way in which we were allowed to have a familiar character in the Predator, surrounded by actors that we didn't need to know beforehand to really just allow ourselves to immerse into the story. The acting in this film was fun, was solid. I mean, I can't say enough about Amber Midthunder in the main role. When you get a chance, Paul, there's an article out there about the dog and how she was adopted for this film.
Right.
Came in very little training.
Yeah,
there's so many unique stories amidst this production, and what ends up on the screen, I think, is a result of so many people coming together to put together something that they were passionate about, that they believed in, and was highly, highly entertaining.
Oh God, and it's you mentioned Amber Midthunder, and her command of the screen cannot be like. Everything she did was captivating. Every expression on her face was captivating, and like for me, she was like just a magnet, like an attention magnet. I just wanted to see her on screen, and it just it did such a good job with the everything involved with being an action star, and God, I hope Hollywood doesn't fuck this up, because this is I mean, there are actors in this movie that need to just own more movies, and I am concerned that this is going to be a one-off, and they're relegated to smaller and and peripheral roles. But I think of somebody like Wes Studi, who for you and I growing up in the 80s and 90s, Wes Studi would show up in every other movie. Not every other, I'm exaggerating a lot, but he would show up in a lot of movies, but constantly just be the other guy. Like he would be fourth, fifth, sixth lead, and I mean, even in Last of the Mohicans, he's third lead. It's just like, can we have these marginalized social groups be like, have their stories told, and have good stories, and just have them be part of stories going forward, but not just like peripheral, but like genuinely, like, yes, let's get really good money behind them and good stories behind them, and bravo to nobody at any point saying, oh well, maybe we need a this or a that, and just be nope,
they committed to what they were doing. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful cinematography, I think, highlights this film, Paul, across so many vistas that get shot. The overall feeling, I know, across I had to stop before reading the reviews, because I waited till after, because I wanted nothing to taint my thought going in.
Okay.
And I agree with what many are saying, is that this is probably the best Predator installment since film 1.
And I would say it's better. I mean, the first one the first one, for younger folk, you have to understand, Predator, the original Predator, is one of the best great action movies of its time.
But that's all I wanted to be.
But yeah, and action movies of its time were not necessarily great. Like they were entertaining, but the action was very methodical. There just was a feel to action movies. So it was great for what it was. But today, if you're being introduced to the Predator series, and today, after having seen even Bullet Train, or just about anything from Marvel on, you're gonna be like, oh my God, what is this? Because it's like, but for its time, it was fantastic.
It was good. Yeah, it was great.
If I had to watch Prey or Predator, I'm watching Prey.
Like, absolutely, no doubt.
It just because the modern sensibilities, it totally works. It totally works. So
definitely. Well, it's it's easy to guess what we might be giving this movie in terms of ratings. So for the film Prey, available on Hulu, Paul, what is your taco rating for this film?
Yeah, I'm just going 5. It gets 5. I'm not going guac, but it was definitely better. It had just a smidge. I've been all day. I've been flopping back and forth. Do I go 4.5, 4 and guac, or 5? This is an ostensibly better movie than Bullet Train, so that's why I'm going with 5. So
yeah, well, keep that 5 tacos up there, Paul, because that is my rating for this movie as well.
Cool.
Solid all the way around. One that is easily going to be on my list of acquisitions when it goes digital, and one that I'll visit often because, like I said, I do love the franchise.
Sure.
It's just one of those things where, I prefer, a film that captivates me from moment one and keeps me, and that's what this film does.
Sure, for sure.
All right. Well, that is our look at the movie Prey. We move now to Amazon Prime or Prime Movies, where we now are going to take a look at a very unique film brought to us by Ron Howard, and that is the movie 13 Lives.
Yeah.
A recounting of the harrowing experience of 13 young men, 12 soccer players and their coach, in a cave in, is it Thailand? Why do I not know this right off the top of my head?
I'm pretty sure it's Thailand, yeah.
And
they were kids. They were not young men. These were 13 kids.
Well, yeah, this is true. 12 kids and their coach. And I was right, in the Chiang Rai province of Thailand.
Right.
This occurred back in 2018, and this is Ron Howard's accounting. This is not the first film made about this particular incident.
Right.
But I can't. There's a documentary, and then there's one called I think it's called The Cave Rescue or something similar.
The documentary was National Geographic, The Rescue by Jimmy Chin, who had won an Oscar for Free Solo, and wasn't even nominated for The Rescue, but The Rescue was bonkers amazing.
Gotcha. So I may have to check that out.
Yeah.
And so, Paul, just get us started on this one because, again, I was not even aware this was a film coming out until just before its release.
Sure. So, look, it's interesting because this is a pretty straightforward dramatization. I mean, that's really what this is. This is just like a dramatization of real life events. But the really interesting aspect of this movie is who they got to be in it. Like, it's like, so in real life, this is not like this is just a standard trope of white savior complex. It's like, no, that's not what this is. This is like the only idiots that know how to cave dive this well are white people because we're fucking idiots. Like that's just the way it is. Like we do stupid white people stuff, and it just so happened that because white people do stupid white people shit, and these kids happen to get caught in a cave right at the start of monsoon season, when monsoon season came about a month early in Thailand, the cave flooded, and so they needed cave divers, and the only people stupid enough to be cave divers are white people. That's just, it was just blind dumb luck that white people had to save the day because we're dumb. So and they got Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell,
yeah.
Thank you, Colin Farrell, to be two British people. And it's like, they are unrecognizable as British people. I'm just going to say it. Like, Colin Farrell, I recognize his face right away, but I'm like, why is Colin Farrell like a British guy in this? Like, and not like some crazy British guy with a Cockney accent, but just like a straight up British guy. And Viggo Mortensen, I couldn't believe it because I don't think I'd ever seen Viggo Mortensen just being a regular white bread British guy before.
Yeah.
But they do such a good job of just being like, we're cave divers and that's what it is. And so
it's the kind of movie that, again, when you go into, I mean, Ron Howard is great at these films. When he takes a real life event and dramatizes it on film, you're going to be in for a good run. what I think stood out to me most, because literally, Paul, I didn't even know who was in it until I turned the darn movie on. I just hadn't paid close enough attention, and so I'm like, Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell, are you kidding me? Joel Edgerton, I mean, the list goes on. And as this movie, begins, one of the things I think it does well, because again, whenever you're watching a movie based on a real life event and you know what the outcome was, you have to sit there and decide, okay, how are we going to get to what I know to be the end? Right. And how well will you keep my attention in doing so? And one of the things that this movie does successfully is, without, to use your line from earlier, without it becoming a white savior type notion, it really shows you what these men were up against in deciding to help, in coming up with a plan, the doubts that they have. There's an exploration here of both, people's reaction in a time of high drama, without it becoming overwrought. There's a very successful decision, I think, that Ron Howard made to allow us about half of the film, maybe, I think it's close to a half, before we even see that the kids are alive. There was a very purposeful choice in how we see them at the beginning, but then there's all this that goes on, and there's some creative things being done, on the screen that help tell the story, and that was one of them. Is though the end, you don't know, and you wonder. So little decisions like that, the maps on screen, as part of your view of like where they really are in relation to the entrance of the cave. I mean, so many things done that could easily have been too much, and they're used well to drive the story, the narrative of the story, and to keep you on the edge of your seat.
And one of the interesting things you touched upon it was, going into the movie, I was like, I wonder at what point, because I had seen The Rescue, the documentary, so I knew exactly where this was going, the whole thing was going, and I was like, where are they going to? When are they going to find the kids? Because finding the kids was like the easiest part of everything. Every impossible thing they had to do. Like like once they found the kids, it's like, okay, but everything that happens after that is like just one monumental task after another. But dramatically, finding the kids is probably like near the top, like, from a dramatic standpoint, finding that's an emotional high point, and everything else is just like tension that it doesn't reach a climax, but is just tension that is just slowly like, okay, they got to get out of there, and then it's like a release. Whereas the emotional high point is, oh my god, they found the kids, yay. And it's like, but that has to be early in the film, and it's basically the end of Act 1. The end of Act 1 is they found the kids, and then Act 2 and 3 is everything that happens out. Act 3 is basically getting the kids out. Act 2 is how are we going to get the kids out?
How are we going to get there?
It's tough to have the emotional high point of your movie in the first act. Like that's a really tough thing to do, and to still have a movie that keeps you engaged, and they do it. And this is a fantastic dramatization of a movie that has honestly a better documentary. Like that's what this ultimately, that's what this is for as somebody who's seen the documentary. I highly recommend that you watch this movie first if you haven't seen the documentary, and then go watch the documentary, because the documentary fills in a lot of holes, not that the movie leaves holes open, but gives a lot more background to the people that you're seeing, and and really good and interesting background. And I gotta say, Viggo Mortensen plays a great curmudgeon.
He really does. Yeah, he really does. There are some lines he has in this film that, for the kind of man Viggo Mortensen to be, that he was, this is acting. This is truly acting. One of the reasons I think the movie moves so well, despite that emotional high point, like you said, is that sub story, that sort of subplot of the farmers who are, the realization of the water's coming from above, and how do we divert that? And so, usually a story like that doesn't get enough it doesn't get a lot of playtime in terms of the film, but when you're on that particular portion of the story, man, it's impactful. And just so well done. Of course, this for me is another successful outing by Ron Howard, which is what you come to expect from a director of his caliber. And so 13 Lives is just one of those films that it takes you. I don't even know that I'd call it a roller coaster. It's just like you said, it's tension.
It's just,
though if you know the history and you know what the result was, you're still left with that feeling of like, okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Right. Yep.
So yeah. I mean, it's hard to be critical of this film because it does so many things so well. Yeah. So Paul, for the film 13 Lives, talk to me. What is your rating for this movie?
Yeah, I'm going 3 tacos plus guac.
Okay.
Only because the rescue is phenomenal. I feel like I was a little tainted just because I had seen the rescue. But like I said, this is a fantastic dramatization of it's genuinely good. But I tend to like the documentary over the dramatization usually. So that's where I'm landing. 3 tacos plus guac. Really good. Really good.
Well, I don't know if it's the fact that I haven't seen the documentary, but I did land on 4 tacos for this film. The lack of the 5th taco is just, again, is nothing against the film. It's just one of those things where if tension is your bag, then this is going to be for you.
There's a bit of a ceiling for this movie. Let's be honest.
There is.
There's a bit of a ceiling. So
yeah, no, absolutely. But so much well done in this film. I highly recommend it, and I will be following your advice and checking out the documentary after.
Disney Plus.
But yeah, Disney Plus. Okay, there we go. Good to know. All right. Well, that brings us to a moment where we're going to talk a little bit about the show. Make sure you stop by our social media. Oh, go ahead.
Before we do that, did you want to talk really quick about why these 2 movies landed on streaming?
I wanted you. Yes, thank you for reminding me. I wanted you to comment briefly on here we have 2 movies, Prey and 13 Lives, Paul, that could easily have been released in theaters before in times before.
In days of yore.
Days of yore. I can't believe that I live in a time when I can say days of yore and it means something.
Yeah.
What is it behind these 2 releases going straight to streaming? Is this just the time we live in now? I mean, what's the logic?
This is very much the time we live in, but it's interesting because there's a lot of different things in play here. And the most interesting one, honestly, is Prey.
Yeah.
And where 13 Lives is just strictly like, this is the kind of movie that you're going to see more and more go directly to streaming. Why? Because it's obvious that movies that would in the past make 60 or 70,000 or 60 or 70 million dollars and be like, oh, that's really good. This 13 Lives would never be $100 million movie or plus, that's just not the kind of movie it is, but it would make 50, 60, 70 and everybody would be like, hey, good job. Good, bravo, well done, 13 Lives. Those movies don't make 50, 60, 70 million dollars anymore in theatrical releases. They make 10, 15, 20, 25, maybe if they do really well. And so when that's your math, it makes more sense to push the content rather than let's put it out in theaters, see how it does. 6 weeks from now, we'll put it onto the streamer. Instead, you drive content, and you get to say, hey, exclusive release right here, Prime Video, versus Prey, which absolutely could have made 120 to 200 million in a theater.
That's where my question began.
But this is the world we live in because of shitty contracts that people made before anybody understood streaming. So, this was a 20th century release. I think this is one of the last 2 movies. There might be one more that was produced completely pre-Disney purchasing. Like there was like post work being done, obviously after Disney bought it, but filming wrapped, at or shortly after Disney and 20th Century Fox had this horrible contract, horrible from Disney's standpoint, contract where its theatrical release movies go straight to HBO Max. That the HBO is the streaming provider for 20th century movies that get released to theaters. And we saw that with Free Guy, where it went to HBO Max first, and then a week later or so it found its way onto Hulu. But Disney just decided with Prey, look, we like this property, we like this we don't want to see this on HBO Max. So by just throwing it up on Hulu, HBO Max can't ever get it. And gotcha. that was literally it. The decision for this one was not like we're going to maximize, because Prey isn't probably big enough to get people to go buy Hulu, but it's probably big enough to keep people from dropping Hulu for a month.
Sure.
And definitely prevents HBO Max from saying, hey, look what we got Prey. And it's a stupid political move, but at the end of the day, this isn't a $500 million movie. This is a $150 to $200 million movie. And so Disney's probably just like, that's good.
Yeah.
But doing a little FU to HBO Max is better.
It's worth it for them. Yeah.
I think that's a shame. I get 13 Lives and I don't mind that. I don't like the politics on Prey though. Like that just seems like a missed opportunity to get to see a really good movie in a theater.
Sure. But no, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your insight, sir. That's why I wanted to bring the table. I know for myself, politics or not, I like that I was able to watch it in my jams on the night it came out. So
sure, absolutely.
That's what worked for me. So.
That was nice.
Absolutely. All right. Well, speaking of nice, it would be nice of you guys to stop by our social media on Facebook. You can find us. Just look up the name of the show, Real to Real Talk. Check out our postings there. Catch past episodes. Comment away. You can also find us on Instagram at Real to Real Talk. Just let us know what you're thinking if you want to comment there, or just check past posters of shows that we've done. If you're watching on YouTube, we say thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Don't forget, click that subscribe button. And also, if you can't watch us live, make sure you click that notification bell so you know when our episodes land week to week as we continue this movie watching adventure with all of you. Paul, I don't know if you're ready, but it's time once again for What the Hell Did I Just Watch?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to preface this week's by saying when I sit down and look for movies for this,
okay,
I am not looking specifically for movies that I'm going to dislike. That is not my goal. Okay. Every movie that I pick, I am hoping to enjoy on some level. And sometimes I'll be surprised and I'll love the movie. For example, sure. Rubber is a great example where I absolutely love that movie. Another great example is even last week, Beyond the Black Rainbow. Okay. I really liked that movie. I just thought that movie was just going to be weird and but I genuinely liked it. It was my kind of weird. Every once in a while, something happens and a movie just strikes me wrong.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we got that this week. And the movie's called The Dark Backwards. I think it's 1991, might be 1990. Judd Nelson driven movie. Judd Nelson, who, if you assume he weighed probably like 200, 220 for Breakfast Club, he clocks in at probably 150 for this movie. Oh. Just a absolutely slimmed down Judd Nelson plays down on his luck garbage man who's trying to become a stand-up comic. And while working on developing his horrible stand-up comedy routine, he grows a third arm out of his back. And yeah, sorry. No, that's 100% true. And
I was not ready for that.
Co-stars Bill Paxton, who, if you like Bill Paxton and just the energy that Bill Paxton brings to movies, this movie is the most Bill Paxton-y role I've ever he dialed the Bill Paxton-iness to 11 the entire movie. The entire movie is just Bill Paxton. Game over, man. That is his energy level for the entire film. And it it's the lone redeeming thing. That's not true. It also has Wayne Newton in it playing.
Well, there you go.
Playing the talent scout, the talent manager who first rejects Judd Nelson because rightfully he's horrible at stand-up comedy. But then once he grows his third arm, sees the possibilities of having a freak show guy and takes him on. And then the doctor that Judd Nelson goes to see about his third arm is played by James Caan, who is the other redeeming part of this movie, because I actually genuinely like James Caan as piece of shit doctor, piece of shit fraud doctor. He plays a really good piece of shit fraud doctor. Everything else about this movie is just bad. So if you go and look at write-ups of this movie, it's a dark comedy, but a dark comedy that is actually funny is something that has funny aspects to it, is something like a Throw Mama from the Train, where there's something morbid going on, but there is comedy underlying in it. There's lots of examples of dark comedy. I wish I had more. I should have had more examples ready to come. This is not funny. Like this is the kind of dark comedy I hate, which is they intentionally make everything not funny, and you're supposed to be amused with the not funniness. I'll harken back to Velocipaster, which was a movie that was intentionally bad, and you're supposed to be amused by how bad it is. This movie is intentionally, like, the stand-up comedy. I'm going to give you one of the jokes that Judd Nelson tells, and I swear to fucking God, I am only adjusting this joke a little bit.
Okay.
I was at an Indian restaurant, and when I was there, a Lithuanian, an Italian, and a French man walked in, and they asked the Chinese waitress for a coffee, and as she was bringing the coffee, she spilled it, and that just goes to show you can't get a good cup of coffee in this town. And that's literally one of the jokes that he tells, and it's not funny, and he's supposed to be a bad comic, okay?
Yeah.
But that's not a bad comic. That's just somebody who's not funny. And it's not funny to have somebody who's not funny trying to be a comic. Like, I've seen movies where, and I can't think of any right now off the top of my head, but there are movies that show bad comics. And there's something amusing going on behind that. There's nothing amusing. This movie, and I'm not going to use this term as a compliment. Coming from me, this is as condemning as I can give a movie. Is very David Lynchian in what it's trying to accomplish, which is the everyman is represented by somebody who is not an everyman, but is literally the lowest common denominator of man, without being genuinely bad, but is surrounded by people who are genuinely bad and only interested in making him be horrible to him. I mean, and I don't like that. And I don't think there's anything funny about that. And this movie is just not good. This is just a flat out not good movie. And that happens sometimes. But I'm glad that it's far less frequent than, usually I find something to enjoy. This was not one of those times. Just the concept of the movie is like, oh my God, that's crazy. I want to watch that for this segment, and then just the execution is like,
I thank you for the effort that you always put into this. I have to ask you, because normally you try to tie it to a central theme. Was this potpourri?
We didn't have a central theme this week. We didn't have a central theme this week. Other than we're on the letter D. We're on the letter D for real alphabetical, and this has been on my list. This has been on my list for a long time. I've been aware of this movie for a long time. It's on Tubi if you want to go check it out. So,
based on your review, I think I'll not do that. So
yeah, just if you like David Lynch movies, 100% check this out. You're gonna love this. And go see a therapist, because there's something.
Take time after. All right, Paul. Well, thank you as always for bringing such weirdness to the show. You can figure out what Paul's been watching week to week. Make sure you show up so you can find out what it is next week. Right now, it's time for Real Alphabetical, where we're going through the alphabet, and we are up to the letter D, Paul. And you gave me the movie Drive, Ryan Gosling.
Yes.
It ain't no Baby Driver. That's for sure.
No. But there are similarities.
Oh, sure.
Just in that there's a lot of driving. And there's a lot of amazing car stunts.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
It's not a lot of
driving, there's not a lot of driving in it, but there's enough. Gosh.
This is not. Look, this is not a happy feel good movie. This is not. This is not like. This is not. This is. This is a character study, and it's a really good character study.
I had to really leave it at that in terms of my reactions to the film itself, because I am a certified Ryan Gosling fan. I do love his work. Although he is sort of skirting the edge of Kevin Costner-esque work, kind of the same guy most of the time.
Okay.
One of the things that this film does well is use him and the gravitas that he brings. He has so few lines in this movie.
Yes.
And yet he's such a strong presence in the film, obviously, as the main character. There are things I loved in that, each of the characters are, if you take, I don't know if this is going to make sense. Let me just say it. If you take all of the characters that were in this film and you take out the time that they each spent on screen, it's so little, and yet so much happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is what you would call taut. This is a taut movie.
Okay.
Every piece of this movie has a purpose.
Yeah.
And if you remove that piece, it doesn't work.
It makes no sense. Yeah.
Bullet Train is the opposite. Like, let's just use Bullet Train as an example.
Okay.
Bullet Train, there are 3 primary characters in the movie. 4. We'll go 4 primary characters in the movie. And then there's all these little peripheral characters that if you remove any one of these peripheral characters, the movie totally works and it's great and it's fun and you're just having fun. Drive is not that. Drive is there's 5 people in this movie that are important to the movie. And if you remove one of them, the movie, it just crumbles.
It loses. Yeah.
It loses everything. And
I think that's the beauty of it. I did enjoy it. I went in expecting the wrong thing.
Okay.
Because, no, that's not your fault. It's my fault for assuming it had to do with fast cars. And I love a heist picture, but this was sort of a heist picture. This is more of the aftermath of the heist kind of thing.
Right.
And so, one of the things I loved most was just the character work done by each actor. Albert Brooks. I mean, wow, what a presence he was in this film.
Yes.
Ron Perlman, everybody brought it to the table.
Yes.
And when you name a movie Drive and it's really not about the drive-in, it's more about the characters, you're like, this is a good movie. This is a good film.
Well, it's interesting because the title for this movie, while it's driving, you might expect a lot of driving. The driving is really important.
Well, sure.
The title just so works. It just so works for what this movie's trying to be.
It was enjoyable. It really was. But again, I found myself getting to the end going, well, that went on a whole different ride than I thought it would.
So at the end of 13 Lives, you're like, and then at the end of this movie, you're like, but for your emotion is totally different. Totally different.
Yeah. Part of it is like, okay, good, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because you're made to think quite a bit about like who this character really is. There's a whole episode to be done on just this one character and the levels that are, it's an interesting exploration of who this character is. I read an article afterwards asking, is Driver a psychopath? And there was an interesting, kind of study done on like his characteristics and so forth. And yet he had this drive to try to connect with the family. And it was a very interesting film for purposes of that sort.
It's a fantastic character study, and that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for that suggestion. I'll look forward to E for the next time we get together. Yeah. Right now, though, we're going to do some real quick reviews on a couple of more films.
Yeah.
Because gosh darn it, Netflix. Gosh darn it.
You couldn't have held this one off for a week and made it so that we wouldn't have to watch it.
It's a little movie called I'm going to use our new graphics here.
Okay, sure.
It's a little movie called Carter. And gosh, Paul, listen, what the hell, man?
It's interesting because I don't often openly hate movies, but for there to be 2 movies that I watched in a week that I openly hate it's unusual, but it happened. Like, this movie just made me mad the entire time I was watching it, and not because it's too much action, but it is filmed so poorly.
Oh man. Oh God.
What it's trying to do is totally different and doesn't work on any. Like, if you watch this movie and you're like, "Whoa, my God, I love what they were doing with the camera," I'd be like, "Who the fuck are you?" Because none of the camera work works. None of it.
It was horrible. It was real bad.
It openly made me mad. It made me angry that they just couldn't fucking have the camera sit still for 2 seconds.
Someone learned some stuff and decided we're just going to do it over and over and over and over and over and over
and over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah, and then listen. Okay, I'm going to do something that I typically don't do, but
okay,
I've got to spoil because this is a really bad film. This is a really bad film.
This is a really bad movie. So
when you okay, action movie lover that I am.
Yes.
If the action is what pisses me off,
yes,
that's a huge problem.
Big problem.
Listen, maybe it's the camera work. But for me, let me just say that wasn't what I would talk about.
Okay.
For me, it's this action for nothing.
Yes.
Action for no reason. Action because you have a paper thin idea, right? Okay.
3 paper thin ideas, not just 1 paper thin idea.
I didn't even
paper thin
care
ideas
anymore. Like,
that you don't bother to develop at all.
And then you get to the denouement of the film.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? I loudly said, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the conclusion of this film, as it ends out, the spoiler is simply, I won't even go into, it's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But you've made me hate your movie with action. Like, how is the action what takes me out of this movie within the first 45 minutes? And I'm like, this is too much. I don't get where this is going. I don't understand anything about this film. I mean, I understand the concepts and the story, but it's like, why? I didn't care.
It's a zombie movie that doesn't show any zombies. It's they
can wield stuff.
It's a Born Identity lost memory movie where goes nowhere. Like, literally goes like, they might as well have dropped that 2 minutes into the movie because they did, and nobody cared. And it's a political thriller that has no politics whatsoever. Like, this is a political thriller that is the most apolitical, like, goes out of its way to say, hey, North Korea, you're kind of fucking awesome. And we love you, North Korea. Even though this movie's being made in South Korea, we love you, North Korea. You're okay by us.
It was very strange.
It's this movie angered me on every level.
I was so mad when it was
there
over.
Was one action sequence in the middle where I was like, I would really like this action sequence if the camera would just fucking stop moving for 2 seconds.
Tell me which one, because what the hell?
Oh God, it was the one of the multiple breaking out of a building scenes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Was it where the kid was hanging on to the air conditioner?
Yes, that was the one. Yes,
great. But man, I have never had a helicopter sequence in the movie piss me off more than this one, because it was. How do you make action boring? This movie manages to.
Not only that, how do you make action boring? How do you make action boring while having a camera that is in constant motion?
I was literally thinking I need to have my C-bands on, because this is. I never got dizzy because it ain't video games, but god dang, this was a bad movie, Paul.
Yeah,
this was very bad.
F this movie.
Yeah,
F this movie for existing. F the people who made this movie. If this is something that works in Korea, I love you.
Yeah,
I don't need to see this again.
I just wonder if it
Netflix,
does.
please don't like throw this up as like on a regular, like be done with this, because this doesn't
please don't make the sequel.
This doesn't work.
Please don't make the sequel.
Yeah,
So Paul, because we have to, taco rating for Carter on Netflix.
Do we have a 0 taco? All right, we don't have a 0 taco, so it's getting 1 taco. But this is the shittiest. I literally eat half of the taco and spit it out, and like this fucking sucks.
This is a
like
flavorless
I would
taco.
gladly go to Taco Bell every day for a month to avoid eating this piece of shit taco that I just ate.
This was a bad movie. I was. Yeah. I think in the first, I will say in the first few minutes, I was like intrigued, and then shit started happening. I'm like, wow.
And they just
30 minutes later, I was like, I hate this movie.
They literally they make it interesting in the first 5 minutes, and then what's interesting in the first 5 minutes of the movie
never gets touched,
never gets mentioned again or touched or any. It's just like we're done. We're done with this. We're moving on with our lives. This is never coming up again.
They had new fun stuff to do with their cameras, and they had buckets of blood around. That's what got this movie made. So
fuck this movie.
Yeah, exactly how
don't watch this movie. Normally, we're huge proponents of don't listen to us, judge for yourself. Please don't watch this movie, because Netflix is just going to think people want more of this crap. So
this is true. Let it go. All right. Well, we're going to end with Luck. Paul, I'm throwing this one to you because you saw it.
Yeah, and literally, like, I watched it today. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get to this. But like, I ended up with a little bit of time. And it's okay. It's a perfectly okay animated movie that made by John Lasseter, the problematic former head of Pixar, who now is head of I believe Skydancer Studio, and this is their first film. And look, I mean, the animation style is pretty standard. There's nothing groundbreaking. John Lasseter brings in Ratzenberger to do a voice, because of course he did. Simon Pegg does voices the cat, which you see on which you saw on the poster there. It's a cute little movie about an 18-year-old foster a girl who grew up in the foster home system, who has aged out of the foster home system. She's super unlucky, but she finds a lucky penny and because she finds a lucky penny, finds her way into the land of luck. The overall conceit of this movie is way too complex. That's what ultimately hurts this movie, is that one of the things that Pixar movies do is take an interesting concept but make it super simple. Example is Inside Out. Have you seen Inside Out?
Yes.
Okay, so Inside Out, it's a really interesting concept, but it's really simple. There are emotions, they're in your brain, they control you. Boom, end of story. Right. This one, I mean, there's the land of luck and there's the land of unluck, and they send out they are connected to the human world, and they send out all the luck and unluck, and it's random, and the unluck doesn't feel random, but trust us, it is. It's just that sometimes unluck is sticky. It's a sticky thing, and so it can get stuck to you, and too much. There's the concept here, I get it. But there's just way too much to try to understand what's going on in this movie, and it takes forever to get the ending. But everything that happens along the way is cute and nice and fun, and you feel good at the end. This one is just like two tacos plus guac, and that's what it is. Yeah.
And you can find it on Apple TV Plus. Yeah. So Paul, thank you for throwing that in.
If you have kids, I would recommend putting it in. It's cute.
Excellent.
So, there you go.
Well, it has been a fun evening once again talking movies with you, Paul. We're going to take a week off, and we're going to be back on the 23rd when we will be looking at what remains the rest of the year in terms of films that are coming out. So look forward to that. So enjoy the break in the meantime, Mr. Paul.
Yeah, Avatar and Black Panther might be featured prominently in that conversation.
I'll be looking forward to that. Absolutely. I'll also be looking forward to whatever movie Paul gives me for the letter E. So make sure you join us in a couple of weeks and find out what the real alphabetical goes toward next. Paul, as always, it's a lot of fun doing this with you.
Yeah, man, this was a good. I love watching new movies, and this was a fun week for new movies.
I am glad I had the vacation time to do so. So, but fuck Carter. So, our last thought, on that. All right. Well, thank you all so much, everyone, for joining in. We thank you for watching either live or on YouTube after the fact. So just remember, what's most important above all else is that you are awesome, you're amazing, and the world's a better place because you are in it. We'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode.